Hello everyone, nubkeks here. Welcome back to Nub Raids, and in today's video, shout out to commenter Mont6411 for providing the topic for today's video. I just recorded actually a Soulstone pull video, and I saw this comment and I thought, hey, this is actually super relevant, especially with upcoming faction war content, really looking ahead for the rest of 2025, the crazy power creep that's been in the game over the last year and a half and so. Let's see his question. We're going to answer it today. Hey, Nub, always enjoy your videos. I have an idea if you're interested. I am. Thank you. I'd love to see who needs 6-star souls first video. You could do a tier list with all of the ones that Plarium made available through events, then your top 10 others, for example. We've had a lot of 5-star souls given out by Plarium, or Platinum. I've gathered several others from summons. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on who benefits from buying a 6-star the most, and what order you would buy them in. So I'm going to do the discussion here in this video. I might try to do a collab, actually, maybe later in the week, and do a tier list of champions who've had guaranteed 5-star souls. I'm not going to do that in this video because that requires actual work and research, and I hate those things. No, boo. No, I'm only joking, of course. Let me walk you through it. So the first thing I will go over with you, in fact, let's go big here, and we can in fact only show Awakened champions, which is a button I have never pressed before this. We can see all of the 6-star souls that I've had. I have pulled some of these, and we're actually going to talk in this video about buying red essence for specifically targeting champions versus buying eternal soul stones, and where I think the value difference lies. Soul stones or souls. We'll talk about it directly. But yeah, I've only bought some of these directly with red essence. Those are in order. Actually, the first one I bought, and in fact, my I think I got better at this over time. The first two I bought, I actually regret. The first one was Seer, 6-star Seer, for the obvious reason of, 6-star crushing Randon Seer. She's going to ignore all the defense. She's going to absolutely delete waves. I actually hugely regret this. I think this was a mistake. I would not recommend anyone to buy the soul for her. Two main reasons. Number one, this helps her kill waves very easily, but Seer can already wipe out waves extremely easily. She doesn't need the soul to do it. It will let you save some on gear, but I really don't think that's actually a very big deal at all. And yes, she's an epic, so it's not the most expensive soul, but still, I'd probably, if I could, reduce her to a 4, well, I guess she was a 5-star. If I could reduce her to a 5-star and get that red essence back, I would do it in a heartbeat. The second thing that this is bad for as well, in fact, I might have bought several levels for her, which was a disaster. It actually makes her worse at speed farming dungeons because especially you come to some things like the Ice Golem. For dungeons where you want her to wave clear and then die to the boss, for the hard mode dungeons, your champions get damage reduction the more stars they have. So the higher they're awakened, the more damage reduction they get. Seer becomes incredibly tanky, even built with literally 0 defensive stats at all. She becomes incredibly tanky just by virtue of being 6-star, which means when you come to Ice Golem, you waste a whole bunch of turns with your Seer who refuses to die. Now, of course, we could just pull a second Seer, level her up. I might in fact do that. But yeah, so that was the first one. Do regret that. I also, I then bought Necmo Thar, which I also somewhat regret. And the concept for this one was simple, well, Necmo, he is a fast champion. He loves the extra speed. Necmo, he's amazing for Hydra. Surely he will never be power crept. And here I am, a year and a half later or so, and Necmo is very much being replaced in my Hydra teams. Very much being replaced. So yeah, don't need him for that anymore either. I thought Cruelty is a strong blessing. This is a good one to level up, but again, it stacks up faster. Again, though, I don't think it's actually that important. So yeah, I actually do regret the Necmo Thar as well. I've done 3 others, and these ones all, I think, made a lot of sense. We got Trunda. This is one I personally dislike and didn't want to do, but it makes an absolute ton of sense. Trunda is so overpowered for Hydra, like literally 10 times better than the next, literally 10 times better than the next damage dealer. She makes a ton of sense to put the 6-star for the purposes of Hydra Clash and helping out the clan. So we got that one. And funny enough, when I bought this soul, This was back in the Crushing Rend Trunda days, which made it a bigger deal. Now it's Nature's Wrath, so you're getting effectively 15% more damage, which is not as strong as Crushing Rend was for her back in the day, but nonetheless, 15% more damage on a champion who's already exceeding other damage champions by a factor of 10 actually ends up being a huge amount of time. Like, if you're doing 10 times more damage, you get 15% more. You just done as much damage as another entire damage champion in the Hydra team. It's ridiculous. So this one still is pretty good. Though I would say this was one where we're going to talk about potential for power creep. In the case of Trunda, it's more a potential for nerfs. I do think that is possible. So this has certainly been a risky one. And then the more recent two I've got fairly recently, I got Sifi to 6-star. And I got Armans to 6-star. I'm sure you've heard of these champions. So those are the champions I've put up. I do not regret the Trunda, Sifi, or Armans. I do regret Seer and Necmo. So I'm 3 out of 5, but at least my more recent choices I feel like have been better. And I'll walk you through the thought process. So one of the first things to consider, simple enough, is the speed stat. That's the extra stat you get at 6-star. For certain champions, speed is not useful. For some champions, many champions, speed is really, really nice, but not crucially essential. And then for certain champions, speed is absolutely essential and is game-changing. So for example, one very common misconception I see amongst players, very common, is that Arbiter is a bad late-game arena champion. This couldn't be further from the truth. Maybe when you're super uber endgame, she's not quite as relevant. But I see her all the time, constantly in Gold 4 Live Arena. Now, I personally do not use my Arbiter. Why? Arbiter is fundamentally a go-first champion. Obviously, her speed aura, her high base speed. You guys know. All right, the purpose of your Arbiter in your team is to make sure that your team goes first. Now, speed is essential. And this is a problem, right? Because, let's say HP. Doesn't make, let's say if your Duchess Lilith has 20% more HP than my Duchess Lilith. It's noticeable. It makes a difference, but it's not, it's not game breaking. If your Arbiter has 20 more speed than my Arbiter, your Arbiter goes first, game over, and you're dead. Now, obviously in Gold Arena, you can't both have Arbiter in Live Arena, but I cannot use my Arbiter well in Gold Live. It's not even worth putting my best gear on her or anything. For a couple of reasons. Number one, I don't have the Faction Guardian, so that's minus 10 speed, and then I don't have a 6-star Blessing. That's another minus 15. I am 25 speed behind my opponents in Gold Arena, and often they're going to have her +2, sometimes a nice +4 Arbiter. I've seen definitely a good few +2 Arbiters. And then, of course, when you factor in the Intimidating Presence, which is your best speed blessing, and the effect that has as well, for me to go in with a +0 Arbiter without the 15 speed and without also the 10 from Faction Guardians, without having that powerful blessing, she becomes an absolute liability. Suddenly, this champion is not helping you go first. She's probably actually ensuring that you don't go first. And that is a big part of what you want to base your decision around, I think, in terms of the souls. That +15 speed is massive. So you can see that is the decision I made with Sifi, who is a classically run very fast. And she's not as strong going first, I would say, at the moment. Like Supersonic set really messes with her. Her speed boost, she only has a 10% turn meter fill, but she's still very good. And then Armans, of course, your classic. He goes first and locks out your whole team. Again, there's more counters to him now, but still, I found that to be very worthwhile. And we'll talk about the Intimidating Presence blessing as well for the purposes of this. But yeah, that extra speed, even ignoring the effects of the blessings, is really impactful. So that is definitely worth considering. On fast champions like Lazarius, obviously you can't purchase a soul for him. But champions like Armans, who was available with the +5, the 5-star soul, getting that upgraded. Aestra Dreamsong, that's another good example. I actually use her in the place of Arbiter because I do have the Faction Guardians finished and she's got the 5-star soul. She's better for me than Arbiter is. Don't use the Arbiter Revive that much. It's the turn meter boost that matters more. And so on. Freya would be another good one to put to 6-star for the purposes of speed and being a speed booster. That was available, certainly not easily, but was available, guaranteed. Very expensive, but guaranteed. That is something we're considering. The next thing is the blessings themselves. So again, I would say some blessings only work at 6-star. Polymorph is a great example where it no longer requires accuracy, becomes irresistible at 6-star. So if you want to run Polymorph on champions like, let's say, Sifi, I think Ancora would be another really classic Polymorph champion. It only works at 6-star because you don't build accuracy on these champions. So that's a great example. Another really good example from the epic blessings, we had it on Seer. Crushing Rend works fine actually on Seer at lower blessings because she one-shots everything anyway. But let's say for Hydra, on many champions, Crushing Rend is incredibly strong. So for example, I've got a 5-star ninja. If I put him to 6-star, gave him Crushing Rend, it'd be crazy good. Because this makes every hit ignore defense. Whereas even at 5-star, it's only the first 2 hits in each round ignore defense. 5-star, it's perfectly fine for wave-based content, but when you go into something like Chimera or Hydra, it becomes a heck of a lot weaker. It only works for 2 hits out of potentially hundreds of hits. It's basically useless. Whereas 6-star becomes ridiculously strong on top of the fact that it gets more than twice as good. So some blessings, yeah, like that again, Crushing Rend's another example. I think another brilliant example is Ward of the Fallen. It's quite a niche blessing, but on a Rotus, again, big disadvantage for me and my Rotus, Ward of the Fallen, another blessing, which, you know, at whatever, he's 4-star right now. Even at 5-star, I'd have 2 bone armor stacks and that's it. At 6-star, I get 3, so it's already 50% better effectively. But you also do bonus damage when attacking, which is kind of nice. And you also start regenerating bone armor stacks as well. So it makes it so much better. Some blessings only really work well at 6-star. So that is definitely worth considering. Okay, am I going to be running Polymorph on some champions in Arena? That's where the 6-star becomes important. Temporal Chains, let's mention, or Intimidating Presence, excuse me. Let's mention this. We'll come to Temporal Chains in a second. This is very strong, again, for those speed teams in Arena. I think if you're trying to go first, you really want as strong a Temporal Chains blessing as possible because it boosts your aura by a massive extra chunk at 6-star. You do get the equally strong weaken effect at both 5 and 6-star, but this is very impactful. Again, if you're trying to go first, making your opponent's speed aura weaker, making yours stronger is a big deal. Like if you're going, you know, if you need to go faster than their Armans, try lock him out or one-shot him or something like that, you need the speed. Every point of speed counts. Speed is a binary stat, effectively. If you have more speed, you go first. It's that simple. And yeah, I actually think it's a terrible design that there's 15 speed here. I really think I think the game would be in a much healthier spot if there was like +5 speed on 1, 3, and 5-star, and the 6-star was something else. But hey, it is what it is. It's really designed this way. The reason that so many blessings only work at 6-star, that all of the speed is consolidated into 6-star, is for one very simple reason, which is they're trying to make you buy soulstones with real life money. That's it. That's the only reason. It's terrible from a user perspective. It's terrible from a game balance perspective. It is done intentionally to sell soulstones. So that's something you have to understand there as well. One other point for the 6-star blessings, some blessings get worse at 6-star. This is the Marius effect. So specifically 2 to watch out for that are very strong blessings, but Temporal Chains at 6-star instantly decreases turn meters of all enemies by 15% when they receive a 3rd active buff. That's a really great effect. It's very strong, but watch out for our good friend Mr. Marius, who you'll see in basically every arena fight because he is immune to turn meter reduction, and whenever an enemy attempts to decrease his turn meter, he counterattacks with his default skill. So with a 6-star Temporal Chains, you can just start triggering a whole bunch of Marius counterattacks, which is pretty bad. The other blessing that does this is at 6-star, not that one, this one, Incinerate. Again, extremely strong blessing, but it's arguably better at 5-star, which doubles the damage of your HP burn. Insanely good, because burns are powerful in Arena, and particularly so at melting through Stone Skin, and there's some very strong burn champions like Gizmak, Sulfurion, Volcanos, etc. At 6-star, it decreases enemies' turn meter when they receive damage from HP burn. If you've ever seen Volcanos with a 6-star Incinerate blessing against Marius, you have to see it to believe it. It's literally a machine gun. Like, literally hundreds of Marius A1s pour out. It's ridiculous. So you do have to watch out for that. That is one thing to watch out for. It's the Marius effect. Again, this is something to consider right now. I think this it will still be a thing probably moving forwards, but it will become probably less of a thing as the months go on and more power creep happens and Marius is not as sort of ubiquitous, as omnipresent as he is now, because he's in every single fight at high end arena, and he really punishes turn meter pushback. So watch out for that. As you've probably heard then, what are your most important areas to target for these blessings? I think it's a very simple rule. PvP, that is the most important area. PvP. So the arenas is big. We now have live arena, of course, a classic live and tag. Siege is effectively another arena mode as well, and they've just made Incinerate and Lethal Dose work there too. So there you go. You've got four of these modes. I'd say Classic's not too important, but people really struggle with Tag. Live Arena is massive. Siege is important as well for rewards. That's a lot of areas where those blessings are really impactful, and certain like Polymorph are really only for that. And then I would say in the clan bosses, Hydra and Chimera specifically, they do have PvP as well in the form of Hydra Clash. So you want to be getting as much score as possible for your clan in those clashes. So those actually become, I think, a good source as well. I would say Doom Tower, not important for blessings. Cursed City, blessings are really good, but I think Cursed City is, you just build up a strong account in general, and that will help you in Cursed City. I don't think you build specifically for it. Faction Wars, we've got new Faction Wars coming out. Again, I suspect it'll probably be something like Cursed City, though, where it's just build strong champions in general, and they'll work for Faction Wars. Obviously, we'll see when it comes out. The hard mode Faction Wars, I suppose it will be. Yeah, we'll reassess at that point. And I would say the dungeons are really quite unimportant for blessings. They are pretty powerful for the hard mode dungeons, like you take less damage, etc. But I don't think, again, you should be targeting them right now. Certainly not with your 6 stars. You don't really need the extra speed. You don't really need the 6-star effects for dungeons either. I think it's not something that is worth considering, in my opinion, with your very limited resources. So those are your most important areas. Effectively, arenas, siege, and the clash clan bosses. Those are the ones I would target. The champions. So therefore, what types of champions are worth investing in? Power creep is definitely something to consider. You saw that with my Nekmothar. I thought Nekmothar, he's a safe bet. Hydra Clash, let's go. He actually, funny enough, he came back and is super good for Chimera. So it's actually come back full circle for me, and it's actually not a bad choice now. I just need to get an Affinity Breaker set so he can run on all the rotations. But yeah, my 6-star Nekmo actually came back for Hydra. So that wasn't too bad, for Chimera. It wasn't too bad. I would say you're generally safer investing in the arena champions. So a champion that can be good in multiple places can be very, very strong. So for example, Lady Noelle, she's a reasonable option for people, for sure, because she's great for arena, and she's also pretty good for Chimera. So it's not I wouldn't say she's the best option, but she's good. I'd probably be putting her in like an A tier of 6-star souls, depending on what else you've got. Not bad. Aestra Dreamsong, again, I've got her quite fast. She's a great champion, that extra speed. She's a surprisingly good arena champ. And so on. They're not bad, but generally speaking, arena champs are good. I would say champions that are clearly overpowered, like S+ tier, either you say they're S+ tier or S tier, really, really strong, arguably overpowered. I would say both Armans and Trunda are arguably overpowered. The Sifi I picked as well. I wouldn't say Sifi is overpowered, but she's clearly like S tier, S+ tier. She's insanely strong. They are great champions to put blessings on, and likely to hold their value for a long time. Void legendaries are a great one as well. Void legendaries are typically more rare. They're typically more powerful, so they are often very worthwhile investing in. Something I see actually with Sifi, and I actually mentioned Lady Noelle as well. Champions who are couples, I think Ancora falls into this. These can be decent to consider too. Champions that, because they've got a duo partner, not always, but they can hold value for longer. But I would still only be targeting the couples that are, S tier in arena. Like, I wouldn't be going, wow, I'm going to buy 6-star souls for Alsgor and Jetney. No, but, champions like Sifi or Rotus, the fact that they are a couple can hold their value a little bit more. I think a more modern version of this would be Faction Unity. I think Faction Unity champions, especially strong ones, are quite likely to hold their value. Again, I'd be looking for ones that are relevant to Clash and relevant to the arena modes. So for example, I have Fina, I also have Vizug. You guys can put 2 and 2 together and say, obviously Fina is far more valuable to get a 6-star soul on than Vizug. You know, Vizug, he's fine, but he's really mostly for those sort of dungeon modes and whatnot, whereas Fina is incredibly strong for both Hydra and for Chimera. She's incredibly strong as well in Siege, potentially even decent in some of the other arena modes, especially if I had a Galathir. Woo boy. So yeah, they're worth considering. And like Void Legendaries, like your Lamassus, Lydia, and so on, they are great to get those big 6-star souls on. Like your guaranteed Void Champs, Arbiter, another example, that are very, very good and sort of hold their value because they're just very strong, guaranteed free champions for a long time. So those would be broadly what I'd be looking at. I think damage dealers can be worthwhile as well. And that's definitely something to consider too. I think when you're not buying a ton of soul stones, when you're free to play or low spend, as you can see for me, I've generally gone for supports first. I think that is probably more generally what you would do. Though if you have a damage dealer who's amazing for both the clash modes and arena, I would consider it. So let's say Harima. Ooh, Harima's that's a 10, or a Taurus. Ooh, okay. Now we're talking. That's pretty spicy. Like I've got Thor. I would love to get Thor to 6-star, but Thor I'm not using in arena. Thor is for Hydra only, so that's a lower priority. Wukong, I mean, he's great for arena, but I'm not using him elsewhere, so it's a bit of a lower priority. I feel like the damage dealers when they're 4-star can work fairly well. I mean, a great example, Marius. Again, covers several of the points we've made. Okay, is he an arena champ? Yes. Is he S+ tier? Arguably OP? Yes. Is he a Void Legendary? Yes. He's not a couple or faction unity, but he is one of those guaranteed free Void champs everyone's going to get. He's universally useful. He's definitely a champ that I've bought all the way up to 3-star, and I will likely purchase all the way up individual stars in the market, all the way up to 6-star, and not regret that at all, because he is likely to hold value for an extremely long time. But yeah, I do think upgrading damage dealers can be nice. Again, I'd love to upgrade my Ninja. It'd be a huge damage boost, because I do use him for the clash modes, but I don't use him in arena, so that lowers the value ever so slightly. But yeah, again, these are sort of things that are worth considering. Okay. There was one final point I wanted to make, and now I've totally forgotten. Oh, yes, that's right. Soul Stones versus Essence. For me, I think it is... Obviously, you can only spend your gray Soul Stones. I forget what they're all called, guys. You can only spend the gray ones on Mortal Soul Stones, so obviously that's what you do. For your middle ones, your orangey gold, I guess they're gold-colored, you can buy Immortal Soul Stones, or you can buy Immortal Soul Essence. I think buying the Immortal Soul Stones is generally the way to go. Immortal Soul Stones are significantly better than Mortal Soul Stones. Mortal Soul Stones kind of suck, and I wouldn't recommend buying them with real money ever. Immortals are very good, and they tend to give pretty good points for events. The other crucial thing is Immortals will give you, by pulling Immortals, you get Eternal Soul Coins, which is quite nice. Actually, here we can find out the name. They're Immortal Soul Coins. Of course, they're called Immortal Soul Coins. Yeah. Basically, Immortal Soul Stones generate Eternal Soul Coins for you. And you can also sell any excess souls as well. So I tend to value the Immortal Soul Stones much higher than the Immortal Soul Essence. And I think that there's not that many champions for whom Immortal Soul Essence is that important. Like, you might buy the 1-star soul for a few different champs. Like, I don't know, get a Brimstone into your faction war teams or something. It's fine. It's not the worst. And get that chunk of HP from a level 1 soul. It's kind of okay. I wouldn't do it for many, but it's not horrendous. And again, when you do, it's more so, I think, you'd be using your gray essence for a champion like Marius, who you pull like a really OP champion, and you want to get them to 6-star, and you just can't pull a soul. Eventually, you will just start buying their like, I'm just buying the Marius souls at this point because I can't pull one to save my life, and that's fine. This is where it becomes more tricky. How do you spend your Eternal Soul Coins? Soul Stones or Soul Essence? I have done a bit of both. The advantage of Soul Essence is you get to target the champion. You will get fewer champions at 6-star, but you are reasonably guaranteed, not always, as I said, I regretted, for example, Seer, but you are reasonably guaranteed to get a very good champion to 6-star, which can have a huge impact. And this generally is a safe bet. It takes about 6 months to do it, but this is generally very good. And getting those incredibly strong champions like a Shuzen, a Marius, Odin, whatever, getting those sorts of champions, that caliber up to 6-star is definitely going to be worthwhile, and it's going to be worthwhile for your account for a very long time. So this is always a safe bet. The Eternal Soul Stones is random. It's a gamble. I think the biggest advantage for these is they do give you a lot of points for events. I would never pull these unless I'm a Kraken. I would never consider pulling these for random little events. But I would consider these for Heroes Path events that give you a champion. So recently we had the Knave of Hearts. I personally didn't think that was worthwhile, but that event significantly easier to complete if you had some Eternal Soul Stones. Much easier. I did do the Freya one, and I thought that was definitely worthwhile. Again, it was incredibly expensive. The Eternal Soul Stones made it much easier. The cost to me was, okay, well, I've now turned my soul coins into the soul stones. Like, I could maybe have pushed a couple more champion. Well, not a couple, probably push one more champion up to 6-star soul. Like, I could put, I'm thinking maybe Ancora or Marius eventually, you know, I could have them at 6-star instead of 5-star. That's a pretty big boost for me in Arena. But for me, it was worth the cost to delay getting a 6-star soul by months for a top tier champion in order to get another top tier champion. For me, Freya has been absolutely worth it. She is brilliant in Arena. For me, on my account, she's really, really strong. And she's going to be strong elsewhere in the game as well. But yeah, for me, that's definitely worth it. The Knave of Hearts, though, is not. So it sort of depends on the champion. But that is something worth considering. I would never, I think it's better to just stockpile your coins, by the way. Stockpile your coins until you need them for an event or you need them for Essence. And then that's when you cash them in so that you have that choice available. Like right now, I could come in and yeah, buying 73 red Essence is fine. But what if I need some soul stones for like a big, like what if the next fusion is super OP and then there's a hero's path for their soul, the 5-star soul, but that's like locked behind soul stones. I might need the soul stones to do it. So I'm going to just say, like, likely not. It's very unlikely that would be the case, but just in case, I'm saving up until then. And yeah, I think that's sort of my feelings on it, my vibes. So very much targeting Arena because you're up against other players with 6-star souls. Simple enough. Arena modes, Clash modes, stuff where you're up against other players, stuff where you're up against just PvE, I think is significantly less important. Something else that's an advantage of soul stones as well is you cannot obviously buy mythical souls with essence. You have to pull them from soul stones. You do get a fairly decent chunk of them. You see, I've got far more mythical souls than I've got mythical champions, but that's something worth considering as well. Again, it's sort of designed that, you know, to get mythicals, you kind of have to spend money, really. And then to get their souls, you kind of have to just spend money as well to pull lots of soul stones. So again, it's sort of a money-making thing, right? Again, something to be aware of. But yeah, I think Immortal Soul Stone's generally great. The Eternals are much more questionable. They're very decent, but it's a huge gamble. You might get something good, you might get something useless. So again, if you look at my account as an example, I believe I did get 6-star Lydia. That's insanely good. That's insanely good. 6-star Lanathril, 6-star Robar, 6-star Noct. Are those that good? Arguably not. Or like 6-star Harvest Jack. You can certainly make use of them. And a 6-star Soul kind of makes any champion pretty decent. But yeah, they might not be anywhere near as useful. Like certainly the most useful ones, Lydia was sort of an exception. Uko's not bad. But, you know, the best 6-star Souls I've got from the legendaries are the Sifi, the Armans, and the Trunda. They're the ones that I target, and now Nekmothar, I'd say as well. They are literally the ones I targeted myself, with the Sifi being random, and Shazar actually works and was kind of helpful too. But yeah, there you go. That's the breakdown. Let me know what you guys think. Any other advice you have? That is what I would do. We might do the tier list another time. Big shout out to Mont6411 for suggesting this video. And yeah, hopefully it helped. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.